Infinite development. An alien coming to this planet would find the strangest phenomenon to be the difficulty humans have with creating economic development, something even the smallest child understands, something the schools manage to beat out of us by the time we are adults and able to do something meaningful. Phenomenologists went to great lengths to demonstrate rationalists wrong. Humans have no inherent knowledge. Yet only infants think crying is sufficient to get them all they want and need. Every child discovers what is referred to as quid pro quo. You give me N if you expect Y. It is as simple as, if you want me to be your friend, you need to be my friend. Friends are people with an economic relationship. It's an informal one, but it is still an economic relationship. Groups of friends form an economy. Loners do not understand the economic basis of a friendship. Criminals are economic illiterates. All of this ought to pose no problem, but politicians have become involved. It ought to have been simple. There ought to be people who work together and help one another. Then there would be those who are rogues and attempt to take from the community what the community created, without providing a compensatory benefit. But enter the politician, who are economic brokers. They do not do quid pro quo or exchanges, they insert themselves into the exchange and skim of the top. Entire cities became involved in this, helping the political elite to serve as a go-between, between buyer and seller. Then bankers became involved and created the tools the politicians needed to ensure every transaction went through the brokerage of the state. The state is nothing more than a brokerage house. Taxes are the transfer fee the brokerage house charges to permit or enable a transaction to occur. This is more than a nuisance. Imagine a group of kids playing soccer. One kid comes by and attempts to take the ball. The team tackles the bully, and even though the bully has interrupted the play, the game can continue. Now imagine the kid who owns the field on which they play, refusing to let the kids play there unless no one on the other team is allowed to block the ball when he kicks it. The state technically owns everything in the state. The state permits the citizen to use the things of the state, under license. But all usage is regulated and require fees to be paid. Yet, the state has not yet found a way to insert itself into soccer games or marriages. In fact, there are a lot of activities the state has no managed to control to any great degree. There is an informal economy operating all around us, in which we all participate without even noticing. Yet, we do notice when parasites enter the market. How many times do we notice someone is not returning one's calls, or always seems to be short of money when pizza and beer are purchased? How often do we feel we need to return a friend a favor? How many times do we go to someone and remind them of a favor we did them, in order to get a favorable response to something we are about to ask? These things are not uncommon, even if not necessarily part of our own experience. But how would we feel if every time we wanted to help a friend, we needed to contact a facilitator who would set the terms under which I helped my friend, and in turn, when and how my friend helped me? What if all of our social relationships were mediated by a facilitator, along the lines of what the social media giants attempt? This might seem an unlikely turn of events, but when I need my house painted, I require the mediation of the banks, because it is the bank's funds I use to pay to get the house painted. In turn, if I want a job, I need the mediation of the banks to permit my employer to pay me. The financial system works alongside of the state. The banks facilitate the state's facilitation activities. The state operates primarily an operational function, providing laws to mediate interactions. They have the power to control actual physical interactions. Even the Highway Traffic Act is an example of operational facilitation. Its intent is to control people's movements. When the state licenses business start-ups and cross-border traffic, it acts as a facilitator. The banks act as a second line of defense against insurrectionists who, like sovereign citizens, object to the state's role as mediator, judge and umpire in our social dealings. However, let's back up to what might have originally been the case, which is that if Tom wanted something from Jack, he went and negotiated terms. Admittedly, this was time-consuming and potentially risky. There was little mediation available if Jack turned out to be a person with criminal intent. And so, it seemed reasonable for a strong man to insert himself between the buyer and seller to ensure the transaction went smooth. But hold on 1 minute. The state facilitated the exchange between Jack and Tom, but why was either one subject to a threat of loss, to begin with? Let's go right back to the planet itself, and the insertion of human beings into its environment. We see, despite what is often claimed, the Earth is not friendly to man. It may have been designed for life, but not for civilizations. The Earth was never friendly to the prospect of economic development. If it were, it would have produced a worldwide civilization. Everything man uses must be processed, other than air. There are only two ways for this to be done. We either manufacture what we need as a subsistence farmer, or as a community. The subsistence farmer owns property and adds value to this to produce the things he wants. But this process cannot simply be expanded on to produce civilizations. But this is what humans have attempted to do. The subsistence farmer has become the owner of an international corporation. These owners of property use other humans as domesticated beasts, devoid of will or rights. Naturally, this property is at risk not only from the underclass of laborers but competing facilitators who want to accumulate more property. So, there is an inherent risk within the present system. It is a war of all against all which the state inserts itself to maintain a semblance of order. Underlying it all is the law of the jungle, an environment in which might makes right, and the end justifies the means. But we do not want to dwell too long on a system everyone understands is malignant. However, we must understand the error that crept in and has only progressed further along. There was nothing wrong in an individual claiming land and other resources for personal use. But that does not make it right to claim it as commercial property. There is no path to justifying or validating the ownership of capital. Such claims are based only on the ability to impose one's claim violently on any contenders. Might does not make right, it only makes dictatorships. To facilitate the transformation, the church must take on the form of a conventional institutions. In this case, a charitable mission or a not-for-profit charitable organization is suggested. The objective is to liquidate private holdings and turn them into a common share issue held by the community or church. These assets then become the basis on which equity is generated. Everyone in the organization works for the organization and is paid by the organization for the work they do. There are no exceptions. Everyone is given a job, and everyone is paid for the job they do. This includes housewives. Work is scaled to the abilities of the individual. All debt is assumed by the church. All work whatsoever needs doing is assigned to the relevant sector at the relative level for prosecution. There are 12 economic sectors, each overseen by skilled deacons. The 12 sectors are governed by a general council of elders. Each sector is divided into 12 organizational levels based on the jurisdiction size. Resources are moved from sector to sector and from facility to facility as demand rises and falls, that is according to market pressures. This puts the economy on the same level as a family, in which the capital of the family are not owned by any particular individual but are held by the family unit, each member using what he or she needs and supplying whatever it is he or she can do. The difference is that the economy is provided with a unit of value so as to track income and expenses. Work produces income and consumption produces expenses. The person who works is paid a living wage as established by the church. The wage is paid in prefers, which are credited to the account of the worker. As he or she spends his or her income, his or her account is debited. This is a very simple but sophisticated system that makes formal the informal economy. All work done is paid for, and thus everyone has the ability to pay his or her costs. There is no unemployment because it does not benefit the church to have members idle. There is no debt because whatever is needed is transferred from where it is needed less. There is no need for the state or taxation, it is all a deception. Whatever is needed is provided by workers. Everything is paid for by credits applied to the workers' accounts. There is no inflation, when there is no deception, because there is no parasitism. The key to economic development and to the perfection of all things, is to increase our spiritual maturity. We need the church to create development because the church produces spiritual maturity. Be no deceived. The spiritually mature pay their own way and work in faith with other spiritually mature persons. In so doing they build the church. It is all connected. The church is the good news and the voice of the evangelist. The good news is that the deception is lifted. We cannot evangelize unless we are the bearers of good news, and the good news is that the truth has been revealed. The church is where we are saved. It is by our fruits that we are known, and our fruits are the truth that dispels the deception. As believers we no longer live as in a dream. We know the truth. As we develop the church. As the church is developed, the entire body of believers is developed. This is the true evangelism. We are not all evangelists, but we all evangelize. We all spread the good news that the truth is revealed. All we need to do to create development is not live the truth and reject the lies. This is a war for your mind. It is a war in which the enemy destroys information and puts lies in its place. The truth requires a high level of specialization. Everyone plays a part. No one is left behind. We each have something to contribute, and the contribution of each person makes the worker worthy to be paid.